Hello and welcome to the Ruth McFit podcast. I'm very happy to be here with you today, back in my home office. Obviously, it's hard leaving that blue Caribbean Sea, friends in Barbados, sunny weather, all of those things. But it is quite nice being back to routine. And I know that a lot of people returning from holiday, getting ready to send their children back to school next week, are kind of feeling a bit similar to this. And actually, I did feel a little bit smug on our return to the UK. So we flew back into the UK early on a Thursday morning. We had an overnight flight. And actually, just a note to those of you who fly overnight, so you're flying and you're trying to book a seat that means you can sleep. I booked a seat that I thought would be better for my son with the broken arm. So there were a few seats that were just two together. I thought that would be better. I can sit with him. And then if he's sitting next to the window, he's only got to get me to move to get out. He's only got to go through past one seat. And if he's sitting on the aisle, it will be his good arm that's poking over the edge and his broken arm will be next to me. So it seemed like a great idea. So I did that and it was right at the back of the plane. I also thought it'll be good because we'll be able to sleep against the window if needed as well to rest our head. I didn't know that this seat at the back of the plane had a big gap next to the window so you can't lean against the window. I also didn't realise that the seats didn't go back. So we were on an overnight flight and we couldn't put our seats back. So if anything, we had less room. Anyway, just in case you are looking and booking seats, there we go. But it is nice being back into routine. I did feel smug when I got home because we had an online shop arriving that day and I got straight into getting things ready for the following day just to help me get back into that routine. I didn't feel like doing it, but I did it anyway and I'm very proud of myself for doing that. I just did simple things. I made myself a breakfast for the morning. I did a little bit of tidying. And what else did I do? Oh, I left my phone on charge downstairs because holiday brain Ruth was trying to kick in and say, oh, it's Thursday, might as well start again on Mondays. Take your phone up with you, have a little scroll. But I didn't. I put it on charge downstairs and I got my tea ready for the morning on my little tea maker thing. So anyway, feeling pretty smug about that. But we probably need to get on to the topic of today's podcast, which is going to start with a question. Have you ever caught yourself saying, it's harder for me because I've got kids, because my joints hurt, because I don't have the money or the time, or because my life just doesn't look like theirs, whoever they might be? And you may well be right. Those things do make it harder. And I used to do exactly this back when my children were small. I would look at women who were thinner than me or who were running faster than me. And I tell myself that it was just easier for them. And I could find any reason, any story to explain why they could and I couldn't. And in the moment, those stories felt very protective. They made me feel better about not trying, but they also quietly, I guess, held me back. So today, I want to explore this idea with you that yes, life can be a bit harder, but does harder mean impossible? Or are these stories we're telling ourselves sometimes our biggest barrier? So when my boys were little, so that just for context, they are 13 and 15 now, it did often feel like we had loads going on in our lives. In fact, we used to joke about this. What's one more thing when we're busy anyway? And I can say now, one more thing can be the straw that breaks the camel's back. But I didn't know that then. And we would just keep piling things onto our plate. We moved house, we got more animals, and we just added to the chaos. It felt like, why not keep the momentum going? But underneath all that kind of humour and joking about it, there was a lot we were carrying that perhaps I didn't even realise at the time. My husband had been medically discharged from the army and we were still kind of trying to figure out what life would look like for him. And the boys, when they were little, they weren't following the milestones that people expected. So you got the health visitor coming round and they weren't quite doing the things that they expected them to do. And you get those baby centre emails saying, by now they should be X, Y, Z. They weren't always. And we later found out, of course, it was because they are both on the autistic spectrum. But at the time, it felt like just another thing that we didn't quite know how to navigate. But on top of that, at the time, I was teaching part-time still, primary school teacher. And it wasn't like I had just had endless time or space or energy to play with in my week. And then when I looked at women who seemed to be fitter, slimmer, running faster, or just generally looking like they had all their shit together, the stories I would tell myself would come thick and fast. I'd say that it was easier for them, that they don't have all of these things going on, that they don't have young children like mine, that they're not trying to support a partner who's unwell. They're not working and spinning so many plates. And in some ways, I guess that's true. Yes, my life was busy. It was complicated. It did at times feel overwhelming, I think partly because of the pressure I put on myself. But every time I said those things to myself, I made them more real. I wasn't just acknowledging that it was harder for me. I was also convincing myself that it wasn't even worth trying. And the thing is, the stories that we tell ourselves don't just stay as thoughts. They shape what we actually do. And there's a whole field of psychology on this, which is led by someone called Bandura, and it's called the self-efficacy theory. And in simple terms, it just means that what we believe we're capable of is one of the biggest predictors of whether we'll even try. If I believe something is possible, I'm more likely to give it a go. If I believe it isn't, I won't even start. And it doesn't stop there. Our brains also have what's called a negativity bias. We naturally focus more on the things that are hard, that could go wrong, or that we're not very good at. And this means that when life already feels pretty tough, our attention zooms in on all the reasons why it won't work for us. And looking back, I can see that this is exactly what I was doing back then. I actually briefly want to chat about running here. So I've been running for a while now. And really, I started running properly when I had young children because it felt like something I could really just fit into my day. So a 20 or 30-minute run could be something that I did while the children slept and my husband watched them, whereas getting in the car, driving to the gym, doing a workout and driving back just felt impossible. So we could see running at that point as a first small win for me, right? It helped me feel like I was doing something for me. I got a bit of an endorphin buzz, but I was also being proactive with my health and fitness. And there's some research around these small wins as well. It's shown that they are one of the most powerful ways to build belief. Every time we prove to ourselves that we can do something, even if it's small, we increase the likelihood of doing the next thing. And that's the thing about those protective stories, right? They feel like they're keeping us safe, but what they actually do is stop us from even finding those small wins, those little steps forward to begin with. And those small things are the things that could shift our belief. And I guess the danger with the protective stories is that they don't always show up as these big dramatic excuses. Sometimes they just creep in quietly. You don't even notice them. I know that was the case for me, even when we're already doing the thing. You see, running for me, as I said, was such a positive step forward when the kids were young. It gave me that sense of achievement. It felt manageable. And it helped build that belief in myself that I could do something. But things did change a little bit for me with my running. And there was a period of time that I really wasn't enjoying it very much. I had joined various running clubs over time, and I found that these old self-limiting beliefs were coming back in. So instead of celebrating the fact that I was actually out running, my brain started turning every run into this barrage of thoughts about how I wasn't fast enough or fit enough or good enough compared to everyone else. And this is the tricky part with the stories that we're telling ourselves. It can feel like they're protecting us, but really, in reality, they're just piling on the pressure. It made running harder for me. And psychologists call this kind of thing self-handicapping. So it's when we create reasons or excuses that cushion us if we don't perform well. It's a way of protecting ourselves from failure, but it can also hold us back from enjoying the process, which I did stop enjoying. And those of you that have listened before will know that there's something that I do now which has really helped me enjoy running again. And it was setting just one simple intention for all of my runs, to come back feeling better than I did when I went out. And the reason this has helped me so much is because it's allowed me to adapt and adjust it as needed. There will be days where I can push a little bit more and feel great for it. There will be days where I need to go a little bit slower and I still feel great for it. So I absolutely love doing my Saturday runs. They are my longer runs, but sometimes I feel like I can go really well. Other times I'm not feeling 100% and I might have to walk a little bit more. It doesn't matter because I always finish feeling better than I did when I started. And actually, another note on running here, I'm doing the Great North Run soon. And old me would have cancelled by now. She wouldn't be doing it because I haven't trained specifically for this half marathon. I know I can manage the distance, but I haven't trained in a way that means I can get a decent time. And I have to just accept that. But I think old me would have done one of two things. She would have put the pressure on to get a certain time and then been upset when she didn't, or she would have cancelled completely because she wouldn't want to see that she couldn't get that time. And this intention of coming back feeling better than I did when I went out means that I can go into the Great North Run. I can go in and have a goal of enjoying it, but also remember that there is no point feeling upset about a result that I didn't get from the training that I didn't do. So I know I can do the distance, but it's not going to be about time because I haven't trained specifically for it. So my aim is just to go enjoy it, set a pace and continue and soak in that atmosphere. And I'm grateful that I approach it like this now. Highly recommend it if you haven't tried it before. So those that have listened to the podcast before will know that I've spoken about the fact that I got very ill back in 2014 with something called rheumatic fever. I won't go into too many details about the illness itself, but it was a really tricky time for me. And I remember lying in bed one morning and thinking, is this how it's always going to be? At the time, I was going back to the doctors again and again, and they tell me that the active infection had cleared, that my blood markers were now back to normal. And it was just about doing what I could to get back into doing life as I knew it. But this wasn't making sense to me, and it was taking me a long time to get better. You know, I was still in pain, a lot of joint pain going on, and I was questioning why I wasn't getting better when they were telling me that I should be. So I was Googling hard. I was looking for answers. I remember, because it's not very common anyway, rheumatic fever, and it is more common in children. So I was trying to find things in journals. I'd be on the internet, trying to find other people's stories that might give me hope, that might explain my pain. And I even booked an appointment with another doctor privately, hoping for a different perspective. But that second opinion actually just confirmed what the previous doctors had said, that the illness had passed and it was now about building up again. But I still didn't believe it. You know, I had started saying no to things that I really loved doing because I was scared of making it worse. And I wasn't running. I stopped that completely because my joints hurt. So running seemed stupid. Before having children, I used to horse ride and I was asked to go horse riding. And I remember saying no to this because I was actually scared about getting on and off the horse. I was worried that my joints wouldn't allow me to do that and that it would be too risky. I wasn't thinking about falling off the horse. I don't know why I wasn't worried about that, but I remember getting on and off. And actually, the girl who asked me to go was only 14, and 14-year-olds don't really take no for an answer. She didn't really see the problem. She was like, I'll help you. So I went because I was bad at saying no. And there I was on Dartmoor, galloping for the first time in a long time and managing to get on the horse and managing to get off the horse at the end without a problem. And I remember coming home and feeling so proud of myself because I'd proven to myself that I could do more than I thought. So I'm actually grateful to her for not listening to me. And I guess that moment broke a bit of the story for me that I've been telling myself. And that can often happen with our identity. So often we cling to a version of ourselves that we used to be, and we're terrified of testing it. If I never try running again, then in my head, I'm still the runner I once was. I've still got those times to protect me. It's still good. If I never get back on a horse again, I can still tell myself that I'm the person who loves riding or has loved riding. That the minute I try, I risk discovering that I can't do it anymore. And that feels very painful. And I see this a lot actually with women I've worked with in the past. They're scared to start because they think, what if it hurts? What if I can't? What if I'm not as good as I used to be? Which likely we won't be, because if it's been a while since we've done it, we're going to have to build back up again. But that fear can keep them stuck. But starting again doesn't erase what we did in the past. It doesn't wipe out any previous achievements that we've had. It just adds to our story, and it proves that we can still do something. This is the next chapter, I guess. And this is a part that I couldn't see at the time. And I think this is often overlooked as well. We don't know. It's not like at the time you get ill and then you have this realization. At the time you're working through it, you don't realize that you're having these things going on. I did not enjoy going through that period of illness and recovery, but genuinely now, all these years later, I am pleased that I went through it because it has shaped who I am today. It has taught me that progress doesn't always look the way that we want it to, and that the lessons often don't come into afterwards, and that sometimes the stories that we're telling ourselves are the very things standing in our way. I have mentioned this before, but it's worth a mention here. There's this concept in Zen Buddhism called Shoshin, which is the beginner's mind, and it means approaching something with openness, curiosity, and without the weight of expectations about how it should go. This mindset can be a lifesaver. I've definitely used it without knowing that term. A year after getting ill with rheumatic fever, I did realize something important. The doctors weren't going to make me better. I had to do that myself. It was up to me. And instead of focusing on all the things I couldn't do, I chose to focus on what I could. And that's when I started doing some strength training. I wasn't lifting the weights that I can lift now. I remember I was doing, body weight or dumbbell weights. I definitely wasn't aiming for PBs. I just showed up with intention of starting, of being curious, of listening to the personal trainer and doing what I could do. And it built from there. It was actually really nice to be in that beginner mind, because that beginner mind could give us permission to let go of who we were or who we think we should be and just see what's possible. And I guess that is a little bit like my running, with the intention of coming back feeling better than when out. I took the pressure off. A lot of women that I've worked with have been fit in the past. Maybe they were great runners in high school, maybe they were super active before having children, and maybe they were in the gym even just a few years ago before they got a new stressful job or they got ill or joint pain started throwing them off course. And I know for them that the idea of starting again can feel like a real blow. And the thing is that they're likely not starting again. It might feel like you're starting again, but you've got all that experience behind you. So you're not starting again. But I think the reason it can be a struggle is because we almost have to admit how far we've fallen. And I'm saying that in inverted commas because this is the sort of language we use on ourselves. It's not what I think. But if we never start again, then we stay in that identity, right, of the person who used to be fit, the person who was able to run that time. And I think the minute they try, there is that risk of facing the gap between where they are now and where they once were. And that can feel hard. It can feel painful, as I've mentioned earlier. And I think that the beginner's mind can work really nicely here as well, because it says, what if you don't need to compare yourself to who you used to be? What if you just approached it like it was brand new to you? What if you let yourself be curious instead of judgmental? There's been studies on self-compassion and mindfulness that show when we approach ourselves with openness and kindness, we're more likely to keep going and make sustainable changes. When we criticize ourselves, we stop. So I think a practical reframe would be good here. Instead of asking, how do I get back to where I was? Instead, try asking, what can I do today as I am with what I've got? That is the beginner's mind in action. And for me, it was starting strength training slowly without any pressure. For you, it might be going for a 10-minute walk or lifting a light weight or just showing up for that one class that you've been nervous about going to and not expecting yourself to perform in the way that you used to. Small steps done with some curiosity and not judgment. That's the key. That's going to lead then to taking bigger steps over time. And not only from my own experiences, but also from coaching all the women that I've coached, I have learned that change doesn't happen when we are in that survival mode, when we're feeling super stressed, overwhelmed, beating ourselves up. It's that feeling of being unsafe. Our nervous system isn't in a place where we can really focus on growth. There's a theory called polyvagal theory, and it explains this concept well. When we feel unsafe, our bodies move into fight, flight, or freeze. We protect ourselves, we conserve energy, and we avoid risk. And this makes sense, but it also makes it really hard to start new habits or stick with change when we're feeling like this. If we think about it, when we're already stretched thin, exhausted, worried about failing, why would your brain want to add more pressure? And the answer is it won't want to. It will try and find reasons for you to stop, whether that's not having enough time or that it's harder for you or that you'll start again on Monday. And I've said it about fat loss before as well. Fat loss feels easier when we feel calmer. And I think that's really why. And it's why creating a sense of safety is going to be very important. And safety doesn't just mean physical safety. It's emotional too. It's knowing you don't have to be perfect. It's knowing you can take one small step without being all or nothing. It's knowing that you can choose progress over pressure. It's why I called the method the no crap cake method, we're rebelling against the all or nothing. We're understanding that we don't need to get everything perfect in life. It started with cake, not going to lie, but it became about so much more, about having more freedom and flexibility for what really is important. I talk often about slowing down in order to speed up. And the reason for this is because when we slow things down, we calm our nervous system. And when we feel calmer, we feel safer. And when you feel safer, you're far more likely to take action. And I see it time and time again. And I've experienced it myself. But with clients, when they let go of perfection, they have those minimums that they can focus on, those doable, realistic steps. Then they just stop spinning their wheels. They feel calmer, they believe in themselves more, and they actually make progress. I've mentioned her in a previous podcast, but my client Kate, every check-in, puts fat loss in a way that feels calm, and she's absolutely smashing it. And her check-ins are positive. She's focusing on what she can do, and she's measuring her progress in other ways than the scale. So she's looking at her energy, what she's lifting, how her clothes fit, how she feels, her mood, those types of things as well. And this approach also feels more sustainable. So if you're listening today and you've been stuck in this story that it's harder for you, or that you've fallen too far behind, maybe the question to ask yourself is this: what would help me feel safe enough to actually take one step? Because when we start from that point, those steps can add up. And once we're moving forward, belief then starts to grow. I also think it's worth remembering that just because you think something doesn't mean it's actually true. You know, these stories we tell ourselves that it's harder for me, I can't because they feel like facts. But are they really? Or are they ways of just protecting ourselves from having to try? I know for me that if I look back, at the time, I could really justify it. It felt so real. But when I look back, I can see that they were often a protection method. It was more fear-based. Fear of failing, or if I'd done something and not done some well, protecting myself from the fact that perhaps I hadn't trained hard enough, or that I wasn't quite where I wanted to be. So it was protecting me and helping me have a story around that disappointment, maybe. But it wasn't necessarily based on reality. I wasn't looking at what I could do. I remember when I did really badly in the wall balls in Paris, and I say really badly, I got no repped again and again and again. And I felt a huge sense of shame afterwards. But, and here's the thing that I did differently. In the past, I would have pushed a lot of blame onto the judge. Now, I have seen the video footage and it was odd, but I also thought, okay, what can I do now? Rather than not focus on those things at all, I thought, okay, I need to make sure that if I've got a judge that is maybe being a big stickler, because I reckon I was going to 90 degrees, but I don't think I was going below 90 degrees, which is in theory what it says in the rules. So I made sure that I focused on what I could do so that that didn't happen again. And the next time I went in to do a Hyrox, which was a doubles with Claire, I didn't get any no reps and I felt good doing them. And that is also the difference. It wasn't about blame in that situation and stories. It was about, okay, this is what's happened. What's reality of that? What can I do about it for next time? And if we're not testing the stories, then they just stay in place forever. They keep us stuck. You know, do I never do wall balls again? Or do I blame the judges every time? But with the stories, we need to test them, because if we don't test them, then they stay there and they keep us stuck. But when we challenge them, even if it's in a tiny little way, by just doing a tiny step forward, they start to loosen their grip. We start to prove that we can do more than we can. And I want to leave you with a few questions to reflect on today. And if you're listening while you're walking or driving, then just notice which one is landing with you the most, and you can always come back to it later. I'll put a list of the questions in the show notes. But first, what's the story that you find yourself telling most often about why it's harder for you? Second, is that story protecting you or is it limiting you? Third, if you didn't need to prove anything to your past self or anyone else, if you could approach today with that beginner's mind, then what's one tiny step you'd be curious enough to try? And here's a little journal prompt for you to take away as well. Write down the sentence, just because I think it doesn't mean it's true. And then underneath, list the stories that have been holding you back. And one by one, ask yourself, is it fact or is it fear? And what would it look like to test it? So here's what I want you to take away from today's episode. It's been a fairly reflective, deep thinking sort of episode. But I want you to remember that life can be harder. Your challenges that you have, they are real. But harder doesn't mean impossible. And the stories you tell yourself don't have to be the full stop, the end of the sentence. So choose one small step, not the perfect step, not the step you think your past self would have done, just one step. Start with that today, something you can do right now. Maybe it's a walk, maybe it's sitting down with a meal instead of eating on the go. Maybe it's giving yourself permission to start again, but this time with that beginner mind. I want you to tell yourself, I can do this. I just might not be able to do it all at once right now. And if this episode resonated with you, then I'd love to hear from you. Come and find me on Instagram at RuthMacFit and let me know what story you're choosing to let go of. What's your one small step that you can take today? And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to this podcast so that you don't miss any future episodes. Leave a comment, give it a rating, all of those things to help other people find it. Thank you so much for being here today, and I will look forward to speaking to you again next time. Goodbye.